Welcome back to the channel where I go and actually review movies that are exclusive to streaming platforms, and I give you my recommendations up front, and then you stay tuned to see if I can justify my recommendations. Today we're going to actually review Mountainhead on HBO Max. Now, for target audiences, and by target audiences, I'm thinking of people that are fans of dramedies, dark comedies, even fans of Steve Carell, or if you like content about the ultra wealthy or tech bros, that type of genre of movie. I'm going to go ahead and actually say for any of you, I'm going to say it's a save it for a rainy day, put it on your playlist, no urgency to watch it. However, if you're a casual, that you're just trying to see if this is actually, if you're not part of that genre and is this something that you want to watch, I'm going to tell you that this is one that you're going to want to skip. Now, stay tuned and I'll go ahead and actually see if I can justify those recommendations for you.
Some bank runs,
violence,
chaos,
and people are dying.
You're not real. Heads don't explode like that.
heads don't explode like that?
No.
How do heads explode?
Mountainhead is a dramedy that premiered in May of 2025 on HBO Max. It has a runtime of an hour and 48 minutes, and it stars Steve Carell as Randall, Jason Schwartzman as Super, Corey Michael Smith as Venus, and Rami Youssef as Jeff. Now, there's really no other notables to go ahead and actually talk about, as these four are interacting with each other for 95% of the film, mostly in one location. So, as far as casting is pretty much those four. IMDb has a synopsis this way: four friends reunite during worldwide economic turmoil. That's it. A very simple, very direct synopsis. Now, one of the things that you'll go and actually notice within that synopsis is very straight laced, very one sentence, no other dimensions to it. And it's going to be part and parcel of why I have some of the recommendations that I do. I'll dive deeper into it. But for me, now this is original streaming film, and it's looking at the ultra rich and their views of the world and how they look at business, how they look at everyone in it, just everything in totality. It feeds into the worst version of rich people that we can imagine. And as people, companies, governments, laws, and even friends are just kind of chess pieces to move around at their whims. Very rarely are we given good portrayals of the wealthy. And honestly, that's usually because real life does the same. We don't see a lot of media reports or interviews or things of that nature where we highlight good things about the wealthy. We hear about corporate takeovers, layoffs, acquisitions, political payouts, backroom deals, all that kind of stuff. We hear less about philanthropy, charities, or gifts. And even if we do kind of hear about the positive, it's usually with cynicism of like met with like, oh, it's nothing but tax write-offs, or how small it was, or it's just something to appease us peasants overall. So really our portrayal as looking at the ultra wealthy is always met with some negativity, and this movie is no different. Movies that don't show nuance or different points of view don't usually interest me. And looking at the ultra wealthy without a real story to tell is kind of like, it's just not interesting. Like, you got to have something there that can dive into, sink your teeth into, or anything like that. And that's really not here. And I do like Steve Carell, but his acting, him being in this movie, is not enough for me to go ahead and actually change my perspective. So, in regards to, am I a target audience or am I casual? I'm a casual for this. Now, I always want to go and actually have preface everything that I say after this with that knowledge in your head, so you can know that, hey, I'm a casual. This isn't my bag. I'm not the target audience for this, and you can go ahead and actually take that when you go and actually look at the recommendations. If you like the thought process of that, do me a favor, click like, share, subscribe, and now let's deep dive into the movie. So before picking apart the movie as a whole on there, you kind of want to know, what's it like? What other movie, what other content out there is similar? And I would tell you that this movie has some storytelling, some elements of like Succession, which is really big. I know right now, The Big Short, a movie way back in the day on it that really highlights the ultra wealthy, and then The Wolf of Wall Street, I think, is another one that kind of gives you that just verbose aspect of just how little like wealthy people can gotta go and actually see the world, how they just don't see it in the same way the rest of us do, or anything like that. So those are some movies that you can kind of see some of the thematic cinema thematics within this particular film. For me, on the plus side for storytelling in this one, first and foremost, it's only an hour and 48 minutes, and I know that sounds a little cynical, but it kind of really means that it rolls through pretty quickly. You barely remember that you watched it, for good, for better or worse. Obviously, the pacing's fine because they have to get through this movie within that amount of time. So the editing is actually done really quick in a way that kind of gets you to the next portion of what they're trying to do. Even though the parts that's kind of slow down, it's never that way for too long, and so you kind of get to where we're going pretty quickly. Honestly, the premise of this, if you look at the storytelling, the premise of these billionaires being on an isolated mountain resort where the world is going through a crisis is a very good premise. I mean, we always kind of know what the ultra wealthy, the ultra rich, the people with power, things like that, what would they do in like emergency circumstances and things like that, and just kind of give us a peek into that. And so the premise is actually solid. Um, Unfortunately, on the bad side of this, direction that this movie went was not entertaining at all. Uh, Either more for the backstory of this group or the consequences as a result of their weekend retreat would have made the movie more satisfying. So we get very little as far as how this group become who they are. Steve Carell's like the elder of the group, and he's the one that kind of mentored the rest of them. But they're all like billionaires, and they've obviously met. They kind of have this underlying seething of like, don't they like each other? Because I think for their tenacity of materialism and capitalism, and they like the fact that they all want to go ahead and actually stop at nothing to go and actually get money. I think that's where it ends. I think the personalities, they don't really like each other like that. So there's always this underlying resentment of each other and jealousy of each other's wealth and haves and what companies they have and all this kind of stuff on there. And so it'd have been intriguing to see how these people met, to give a little bit more context of how and why they are the way that they are. Maybe that would have made for an interesting story, or at the very least, for the way that the movie ended up, let's see the consequences of what happened that weekend, just so that we can go ahead and actually kind of tie a bow on the story and get some kind of meaning out of it. The fact is, we get neither. And so what you're kind of left with is a half-baked ending with people that you barely understood or barely liked, if you liked them at all. Honestly, there's nobody like, even the person that you're supposed to like, and you're supposed to empathize with. Ultimately, he shows why he's kind of like with that group in the first place, and so you're just kind of like, what was the point? Uh, Honestly, the grade that I give it is more for the pacing and the premise more than anything else. The executing the good story did not happen here, and I just think that they left us ultimately with something that was just that you left you wanting of like, what did I spend, this hour and 48 minutes watching? What was the point of it? And if that's what happens at the end of a storytelling, it's not great. So for storytelling, I'm going to go ahead and actually give a C minus on this. Acting is twofold. It's one, it's part of the story and direction, the script that you're given, and then you as an actor, you bring the characters to life. You go ahead and actually give them. You make people either hate them or like them or care about them or want to see something happen to them or whatever. And you have to translate that and make something come alive or what have you. And for me, this is a weak story, and you have four good actors that are trying to make something and make it mean something, but the hidden disdain for each of these friends has for one another is very much apparent. So they carried that off pretty well. But yet they kind of have this facade of liking or respecting each other because they're ultra wealthy and all that kind of stuff. So the first part of the movie's acting is a solid B, because that resentment is like there. The first half of the story is kind of like there, where they're just like taking little cuts and digs at each other and stuff. And yeah, I kind of like you on here. We good, we cool, and all that kind of stuff. But I hate you because of this, because of your company's doing this, blah blah blah, blah, blah. And you kind of see that of just that there's a dynamic and nuance there that the actors actually pull off pretty well. And the unfortunate part is that the change of the tone of the ridiculousness of the second half of the movie made that acting to be satirical and not fun to witness. It kind of it dives into being too much comedic, and to a point where you're just like, this is not fun. This is not entertaining. Why am I watching this? Because there's no real plot or story to it. And I won't spoil anything for you, but at the end, that whole story, if they never went in that universe, if those four guys never came together for that weekend, nothing within those characters would have changed, except for like one of them. One of them changed a little bit of their fortune after that. The other one's nothing. and and there's a really a big thing that they went ahead and actually hit up Steve Carell's character on in the very beginning that they hinted at, that was like right there, that they could have definitely seized upon and did something to intertwine that within the story, but they chose not to. So ultimately, the acting for this, instead of being like a B where it's pretty solid, I'm gonna give them a C plus. It's not their fault that the tone went where it did, but ultimately you got to make something with it, and it wasn't great. But I'll give them a C plus for attempting it, and knowing what a couple of those actors have done with good quality material, that's why I'm giving it a C plus. Now, overall, target audiences might really relish this look and the thoughts of what the ultra wealthy think of the world, the pretentious acts that they put on for each other and how things affect them. That could entice you if you're a target audience member. I think the comedy part that comes in later may entertain those that love dark comedies and think that it's fun. So I can see there might be some value for target audience members. However, I told you I'm a casual, so for me, I can't think of a real reason why a casual person would want to sit through this. Maybe to watch the first half of the movie, and the first like 20 to 30 minutes is decent. I won't say it's great or anything like that, but it's at least decent. It has some parts on there, and the plot and the ending are unsatisfying. As I said before, it just kind of leaves you with why. As a casual, I think you don't feel any different after having watched this, other than I wasted the time of my life. And I can't think of a bigger insult for a movie starring some very good actors to have this with an interesting premise, but that's ultimately how I feel about it. But there you go. Now you have my recommendations for Mountainhead, now showing on HBO Max. Check it out.
This is a terrifying experience, and I don't know that I'll ever recover.
I appreciate you sitting through the entire video. If you liked anything in the video, do me a favor, click like and share, and maybe if you really like it, subscribe. If you didn't like anything in the video, go ahead and actually give me some comments down below. Let me know what's going on. There might be some other videos around here that the algorithm thinks that might be right up your valley. Go ahead and actually click on some of those. But until the next time, I'll holler at you. Take care of yourself.
Now that's a happy ending. Or is it? Because everything's over now, and all that's left is you and the infinite void.